You're listening to Autumn on the Air, the weekly podcast that brings you conversations about the impact of research commercialization and the people who make it happen. Join us for interviews with patent and licensing professionals, innovators, entrepreneurs, and tech transfer leaders on the issues and trends that matter most. Keep listening for an inside track on the people, IP policies, and politics changing our world.
Hello and welcome to Autumn on the Air. Today we're diving into an important resource in the world of tech transfer, the AUTM Salary Survey. The AUTM Salary Survey serves as an indispensable resource for professionals in the tech transfer field. It provides a comprehensive view of compensation trends, enabling individuals to strategically chart their career trajectories, whether they are in leadership roles, engaged in technology licensing, or involved in the cultivation of startup enterprises. In this episode, we will be discussing the most recent iteration of the survey, the 2022 Salary Survey. This edition incorporates several noteworthy enhancements, including the incorporation of a user-friendly database that empowers users to generate tailored reports to suit their specific needs. Our guest today is John Miner, an assistant director of the Office of Tech Transfer at the University of Central Florida. John's been in tech transfer since 1999, starting as a student assistant. John handles IP portfolios, works with inventors, and builds relationships with industry folks. He's got a Bachelor of Arts in Organization Communications and a Master of Science in Research Administration from UCF. When he's not in the office, you'll find John either tending to his garden or out on the water. Welcome, John. I'm so excited to have you here back on the air.
No, thank you for having me again. I'm super excited to talk about the salary survey today.
Yeah, I'm always excited to have you on, John, because you're so passionate about these surveys and you're just a wealth of information. So there's a ton here as you and I have been talking about this salary survey. So let's go ahead and jump right in. You know, John, you and I have talked about the AUTM licensing survey before, and I know how passionate you are about that survey and its findings. But I understand that the AUTM Salary Survey is particularly near and dear to your heart. Why is that?
Right. So this was actually my first volunteer experience.
Really?
In 1999, I went to my first annual conference. I was so blown away by AUTM and just the whole sort of community that was getting involved. I heard the call for volunteer, and I just sort of picked the one that was salary survey, right? I figured, well, if this is the career I'm going to be getting into, maybe I should know what people get paid in this kind of career. And that's how it started. So I started with the 1999 survey, working with like Ashley Stevens and Dana Bostrom, some of the old luminaries of AUTM. And I kept up with it. I've done every salary survey since, participated in them all, ran most of them.
Oh my gosh.
This is one of those things that I am passionate about because this is truly for the members. This is for the community. Yeah. You know, so much of what we focus on is on, how are we bettering, universities or institutions or bettering, humanity, right? But this is something that pays attention to you as an individual, as a professional, and can help you develop your skills, rise and get into newer positions, and quite frankly, get paid what you should be paid. So this is where my passion comes for salary survey. I think it's really important, and quite frankly, not enough people make salaries, something that you can talk about openly. There's a lot of sort of hesitation to mention salaries and how much people earn.
It's always a sensitive topic, right?
It is. And in academia, it's tough, right? Because some state systems, like where I'm at, it's public information. Everyone can look up everyone's salary. But, in private institutions, it's not necessarily like that. And certain states have different rules. So I just feel strongly that this is really a powerful tool that helps the individual AUTM member, and even those that aren't AUTM members. This is going to bleed out into those institutions and those professions.
So, John, it's been a number of years since the last AUTM Salary Survey findings were published. And obviously, given the pandemic, the tech transfer job market changed significantly during that time. Can you talk a little bit about how the new salary survey reflects some of those dynamics?
Yes, for sure. And it has been a while, right? 2017 was the last published salary survey. The pandemic hit. It was supposed to come out in 2020, but obviously that wasn't going to happen with the way everything was. And quite frankly, offices were not prepared to respond to surveys at that time. And as we had discussed in the last podcast about the licensing survey, during that pandemic stretch, we recorded between 20 and 30% decline in staffing across all offices that responded to the licensing survey. So huge change in the tech transfer landscape. And, this new survey, the way we've put it out now is we're no longer just pushing out a PDF that has, static fields that you can't do anything with. You just got to do your own math, right? No, now we have a fully online searchable database that will allow you to benchmark. You can compare against regions. We've even added a new region now, right? We have the Southeast as their own region.
Wow.
You can compare all the metrics that we had in the old survey, plus a few additional ones. You can now do with searching. You can make this accessible and downloadable to your HR group. It's fully exportable. It'll save this information. So when we do the survey again, all this data will still be in there and you'll be able to reference and compare year to year. So this is a huge change.
That's huge.
It's taken a lot of effort on Autumn staff and everyone to get this to where it is now. And so it's going to be, I think, I hope very well received by the folks because it's in desperate need. I mean, just everything has changed. And, we'll talk about some of these exciting statistics that we've learned, but this is an extremely usable system now where you're going to get lots of benefit and you're going to be able to share this with your office, with your staff, your HR, your administration. And I like I said, I think this is like a groundbreaking change, a great new direction for where we're going with the surveys and metrics for Autumn.
That's a huge change. And I think it's also very powerful, not only for tech transfer offices, but for tech transfer professionals. And obviously, that's one way that the salary survey differs from the licensing survey. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about some of the different benefits for these two different audiences in view of this new format, as well as maybe some of the results?
Yes, for sure. Number one, the licensing survey is great. We have a really high response rate. I think it was like 57% response rate for the licensing survey. So already all the institutions are fully bought into the licensing survey. It's a critical tool that we publish here at Autumn. The licensing or the salary survey, in a sense, it feeds the licensing survey because if you're not paying your staff and you're not able to attract talent and retain talent, especially in this new world that we're living, you're not going to make those metrics from the licensing survey. So, this directly informs offices on what they should be paying people. What are the comps out there? How do we measure up to others? And now when you consider, the remote and the hybrid work environments that we're in everyone is seeing, it's completely different. The first question, I'm hearing this from, all sorts of folks when I go to the Autumn meetings, the first question that applicants are asking is this job hybrid or remote? Do I have to come in? Like, that's the number one question now. It's not how much is it, the salary. It's not, what's my office look like? What are that kind of stuff. It is this hybrid? Can I work remote? Do I have to work in this state? So completely changing, how people are looking at this profession, And so I think, and again, just as we saw with the licensing survey, a new format, we've added a new, sort of Qualtrics-based platform that you can answer and record all of your things. Same with the salary survey. It's going to be extremely useful, I think, for many, many offices.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And let's go ahead and dig into some of those key findings of this year's salary survey. And the first one you've alluded to already, and I want to just jump right into it, is job turnover. According to the results of the 1,000+ people employed at participating institutions at the time of the survey, remarkably, 46%, which was almost half, had been in their current position for 3 years or less. Did that surprise you?
You could, yeah. I mean, I had to pick my jaw off the floor.
I bet you did.
I mean, where who else sees that kind of turnover in what I would consider a historically very stable group?
Yeah.
If we look back at past surveys and both licensing and salary, we never had turnover like that. Never, ever, ever. And in fact, it's kind of like, I'd say like maybe an inside joke around tech transfer is like, directors don't go away. They just come back. Now they're consulting and they're staying in the family, which is great, because that level of experience, you just got to have it, especially when you see that almost half of these folks have been in their job for less than 3 years.
That's a crazy number.
Right? Who's the mentor? We have to be able to, have that passing of the leadership and the knowledge from the seniors down to the juniors, right? But yeah, I never would have expected it at all in this. And that's why I'm just so happy with the outcome of this survey, because who would have, in the past, when we looked at years of experience, we basically just said, how many years are you in tech transfer? And we gave you a median salary, right? It didn't say how many people were in those positions, right? It didn't tell me how many people were in the 10 plus category of 10 plus years of experience. Now we have that data. You can totally track and see the trends of where this is going. Where's our staffing? That one was one of the biggest surprises I saw. And then maybe the next one, if you don't mind, I'll jump right to that.
Yeah, go for it.
The hybrid
remote.
Workplace.
Yeah, that was huge.
It is definitely not going back the other way, right? It is definitely not going back to everyone is going to be in-house anymore. It's out of the 121 institutions, 100 are hybrid working.
That's right? Incredible.
It's crazy. And of that, another 50 of that 100 are primarily remote, meaning just full remote. They're never even going to have to be on campus ever again. And then about the other half of them offer both positions, both hybrid and remote. And this is it. This is the new way it's going to be done. That is clear. I do not see this changing. Maybe it'll go down a little bit. We'll see in 2 years when we do this survey again, if people start migrating back into the office a little bit, but it's never going away. That's for sure.
No, I don't think so either. And I've heard of some interesting arrangements with tech transfer offices where I know some individuals who live, let's say, in Montana, and they work for a university in North Carolina, and they're required just to be in the office 1 day a month. So they fly in. They actually stay a week. Obviously, that makes it, a lot more economical to be there for a week. But yeah, all those new flexibilities in terms of working remotely are it's incredible to see. Things you never would have thought you would ever have seen prior to the pandemic. And all these creative work solutions are fascinating to see, particularly, like you said, in tech transfer.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This was such a, traditional academic type of job position where you were here, you're at your institution. I'm, tooling around the labs and meeting faculty. And, now it's, you could be in a different time zone, different states. It's interesting. But, and I heard, there's, some directors who have said, why do I care where they live? If the best person for this job is in California and I'm in New York, well, don't I want the best person for the job? And if you're okay and you can manage it from this hybrid and remote sort of paradigm, fantastic. Now I know certain states have certain rules. You may have to live in the state for tax purposes or what have you. But it's a brave new world out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to go back to another point you mentioned before, and that was leadership, because you were talking about directors and directorship positions. So I thought it was very interesting that the survey results suggest that tech transfer offices are more likely to look outside of their office to fill these leadership positions rather than pulling them from other positions. Do you think hiring managers are going to look at this finding and see an opportunity to broaden their reach when filling all tech transfer positions?
I think partially, right? I still think that directors, and I think for the most part, directors are more in person, right? It is awfully hard to run an office and a full team if you're not there in that institution and in that state, because you need that director of the office to be engaged with the VPRs, the presidents. You need them to be involved with the upper administration of the university. So I think from a director's position, and maybe even assistant directors, associate directors, you may see that hiring is still going to be somewhat localized, and maybe it'll be more of the hybrid, 3 days in, 2 days out of the office kind of thing. But I think all the other positions, especially when you're talking about marketing, business patent managers, the financial side of the house. In my particular office, the financial side, I haven't seen him in 3-4 years. I see him on Zoom, and that's it. That's how that's always going to be. So anyone that's totally inward facing, I think it's probably very unlikely that they'll go back to an office unless they just want to be in an office. But I think some of the more outward facing and the administration facing folks, they're going to probably still need to be more engaged in person. But from a hiring manager's perspective, this changes it, especially if you're in a state that permits out of state people to work in that institution. I mean, think about it. I mean, your job pool just went up
huge,
dramatically.
Yeah,
it's huge. Now I don't have to worry about, who do I have in, Central Florida?
Exactly.
I got the whole United States that I can deal with.
Exactly.
And maybe even, picking in some of, international folks.
Exactly. And for some tech transfer offices, maybe in places where, people, aren't really thinking that they'd ever want to live, if they can stay where they're currently living, that's a great benefit to that tech transfer office, because hiring was probably very difficult prior to the pandemic to try and get somebody to live in certain states, versus now you have, like you said, you've broadened your pool of people who are more likely to be interested in those positions.
Yep. No, and I think that's especially true for, especially some of like the Midwest. I mean, North Dakota.
Exactly.
Nothing against North Dakota, but I mean, years ago, it used to be that there was always positions open in some of these harder to reach destinations, right? I mean, LA doesn't have problems finding people. New York doesn't have trouble really finding people. But boy, some of these other places like smaller schools and regional schools that are in, a little bit more rural areas or, a little bit further, flyover country of the United States, right?
Definitely.
It's definitely, I'm sure this has helped with those regards.
I would think so. And, one of the things I found interesting about the survey and actually made me, quite pleased to see as a female patent attorney, when you look at the combined data for all the participating institutions, the median salary for in-house counsel positions was 17% higher for women than it was for men. I wish whatever is happening there, you could get it to happen in law firms, because it's still a problem. But I was really impressed to see that finding. But the counterpart for that was that men were still being paid more than women, and 61% of leadership positions were being held by men, which was pretty discouraging. And, going back to my law firm example, something that we see quite regularly in law firms. So what do you think, John, those findings say about gender and hiring in tech transfer?
Yeah. Well, and I would say, overall, I mean, when you look at the total number of respondents, 53% were female.
Yeah.
All right. So there is a slight tipping of the edge, and that has increased from our previous surveys, right? I think there's work to be done, obviously when it comes to leadership, and not just in from the whether it's the gender, but I think, there's definitely a DEI component to this where, and I think we see it, right? I mean, first off, the 2017 survey, that percentage was higher for men, right? So it's actually starting to go down a little bit, and we're seeing women starting to come up into some of those roles, right? So I think that's a positive step in the right direction. But everyone could do better, right? I mean, parity would be great, right? But one thing that would be really interesting to see, and then we're kind of toying with these ideas of, how can we track this a little bit better for some of these other positions, right? And especially when we talk about half of these folks are brand new within the last 3 years. What does that makeup look like, right? I have a suspicion, my hunch would be that, number one, it's more diverse, both gender and ethnicity. And I think that's going to continue. That trend's going to keep going. And it's, again, if now everyone is hybrid, or again, 90% of the people have an opportunity to be hybrid, I think my pool is bigger. And if it encourages the professional, the autumn professional, to look other places.
Absolutely.
You may not think you would have gotten a job in North Dakota, but you look at some of these, traditional, institutions where, maybe it was like, heavily, male dominant or white male dominant in the leadership positions. I think that's changing. And I think it's going to start moving in the right direction. And this is just another, way to sort of, I don't know, better understand that and help promote that by showing people where this is going and how they can benefit from it. So I think it's going to go in the right direction. It's just, like everything, probably takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, definitely. I also think it speaks for the need for the Autumn Mentoring Committee as well. Going back to that earlier statistics about almost half of the individuals in their current positions have been there for 3 years or less. I think it really highlights the need of the important work that committee does and why it's going to be very important for that committee going forward, because those individuals are going to definitely need mentoring. So hopefully listeners who are listening to this episode will participate both as mentors and mentees in that program, because it's going to be critical that we have participants on both sides.
And the same goes for the education side, right?
Exactly.
We have such an influx of new people, right? I think we take for granted some of the courses that we've all taken. If you've been in tech transfer for any number of years, you kind of forget about the whole basics course and some of those things. But I think maybe it's time to, maybe even look a little bit closer at the education opportunities.
Absolutely.
To help educate and bring folks up and help, show them what's out there in tech transfer.
Definitely. So, John, as the podcast comes to a close, how do you think tech transfer professionals and offices effectively can leverage the data from this salary survey to help them make informed decisions regarding compensation as well as career development strategies?
Well, I mean, certainly, and I will say, look, this survey was not without, some stress. Okay. There was some folks that were a bit concerned. I mean, there's a big change here. Number one, the survey is no longer free. Okay. You have to pay to get access to the database to be able to print the reports. It's not, even if you filled it out, you still have to do it. Now it's very low. It's a low cost to get it. So I don't think it's a huge barrier to entry. But it's changed slightly in that sense. And this did cause some consternation for a few institutions and directors. Again, I know, what happens when this survey comes out, especially if people get it and they realize, oh, I'm in the 5th percentile. I'm going to head up to my boss and say, I want a raise. And this is the complaint I've heard since 1999, which is the survey comes out and then there's a trail of people beating down the door of the director or the VP saying, well, I'm underpaid. I need more. I should get, I need a raise. And, I can understand the stress that can cause to folks. I mean, budgets are still king. I mean, money just doesn't magically appear just because the survey says that everyone should be paid more. So I understand that, there are some rough patches that come with this, but I think it's so worth it. I mean, this is the type of reflection that's needed for, when you talk about developing your career. Like, how do you convince a PhD or a postdoc that they would be great in tech transfer? They need to see that there's a career path. They need to see that both that there's a way up and forward, but also that they can make a real living, right? And again, I'm suspecting that if we were to look at the median age, which is not something that we track, you would see we're trending on the younger side now. And so these are up and coming professionals. And I think it's fully within their rights. They should know what they're getting into. This shouldn't be some sort of like hidden behind the curtain, type of activity where nobody really knows and you don't communicate. This gives the power to both the professional and, quite frankly, it gives the power to the institution to attract and retain the talent that drives the whole engine. I mean, that's really what we get down to. The staff, the tech transfer professional, you could argue, well, it's the faculty that drive the innovation. I don't doubt that. But it's the getting the innovation out of the university and into the hands of the industry and the public. That's where tech transfer comes in. And if your professionals aren't, being educated, getting mentored and understanding that there's a career path here and that they know what they can expect and have meaningful data that they can refer back to and identify and say, oh, okay, great. I see great opportunity in the Northeast. I see opportunity out West, my years of experience, et cetera, et cetera. That's an empowering thing. I think it's a really important aspect of this. And, like I said, I don't mind causing a little bit of trouble every now and then. And I like to sort of stir it up a little bit.
You like to stir the pot a bit?
A little bit, and this is a tool for doing that. You can't do that with the licensing survey. I mean, you can do a little bit, and we changed some things. We got rid of state university systems. We're adjusting that. That had its own kind of bumpy roads. But with this is for us. This is for the individuals, and it is for the offices. There is huge benefit to you, participating and using. If I could maybe make one or two little comments, right? I would like to see more. We had more institutions respond in 2017. We had the same number of respondents. So we went down in institutions. And
why do you think that was? Do you have any idea?
Not that I would want to say on the podcast anyway. But
oh, come on. You just said you like to stir the pot.
Well, I think truthfully, a lot of the larger institutions that are missing, like and that's one other thing, you can go on the survey and see who participated. To me, looking at that list, it was a lot of the smaller and mid-sized offices and institutions. Number one, I think that they were probably hurt more by the loss of staff. Probably. And they're trying to backfill. Yeah. Whereas larger offices, they had a little bit more in the tank, let's say, and they were able to sort of ride this storm out, right? If you have an office of 20, 30 people and you're funded really well and you got huge royalties coming in, it wasn't as detrimental as what I think some of the smaller and mid-sized offices felt, which is like when you have 5 people and that's your whole office and 3 of them leave. The pain there
the pain is huge. Yeah.
It's huge.
You may not even recover. Yeah.
And this is it. And if you don't have a tool like this to be able to attract people, I mean, that was the number one thing I kept hearing. John, how am I going to get somebody when all I have is 2017 comp data? Nobody wants to. You can't make a job offer to someone on data that's 5 years old after the entire world was turned on its ear from the pandemic. Look at how much has changed. You have got to have some up-to-date salaries that people can chew on. And so I do think like some of the larger institutions didn't participate, maybe because, they didn't want to have the discussion. Maybe they didn't feel it was important enough for them. But the people that contacted me the most were smaller offices saying like, I'm dying. I need people and I need to have a salary. And so that was really a lot. I mean, it was the driving force. I mean, I was pushing. I feel bad for Steve. And I want to give a shout out to Jordana Beasy Foster, right? She was my handler in all of this. She made all of this happen. I mean, I'm just the guy out here causing trouble and poking holes in things. Jordana made sure that this went down properly, organized with the vendors, made sure that the database was up, made sure that the data was proper, So that buy-in from Autumn was critical, and it's really important. And so, I don't want everyone. I want more people to participate. I want more institutions to come in. I want to see some of them bigger institutions that are, the largest employers in our group. Because if we could get a 57% response rate on the salary survey, man, that data would be great. And I mean, some of this was just so incredible. Like, who in a million years would have thought half of these folks?
I know.
I don't even know an industry. It blows me away. So, no, I think, I think there's definitely room for improvement. I can't wait for the next cycle to come out. I think a lot of people, what's really going to happen is some of the institutions that didn't participate are going to be calling up their friends and being like, can I get a login for this thing? Like, maybe I can get can I get a preview? And they're going to realize just how valuable it is. And then next year they're going to participate and then they're going to do the license. Now, there's nothing to say that they can't purchase the license and get that data, but you are missing some notable names, I'll say.
And just
not pointing any fingers.
Okay. We won't make you stir the pot that much. But John, can you tell us, you've mentioned that there is a cost associated with the salary survey. Can you share with us what that cost is?
It's $100.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I mean, it's not a huge amount. It's not astronomical. It's $100. It's helping defray the cost because the expense that we incurred this year to implement the new database and work with the outside vendor to develop it all, codify it, put it all out there, and then get these reports back. There was some upfront there, right?
Sure.
And most salary surveys we see are subscription based. So now I pushed against it. This is one of those things that I didn't necessarily agree with, and I had a lot of conversations with Steve and the board about my feelings, because again, I feel like this is for us, by us. We should give this out for free, and that's the power with the people kind of thing. But I understand it, and I'm with it. So $100, most offices can come up with it, and I think most people would agree that this is the value of it is worth $100, especially if you're missing 2 or 3 people in your office, and this gives you the tool to get those people in and relieve some pressure on the offices. So yeah.
So John, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's always a pleasure having you on, and thank you so much for your continued dedication, not only to the salary survey, but to the licensing survey. You've been working on this, like you said, since 1999, and I can't think of a better person to be leading the charge on these. So thank you again.
No, thank you. And thank you for letting me spend some of your time and share with everyone, because I really do love this, and I think it's important for everyone. So yeah, I really appreciate your time. So thank you, Lisa.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you found our discussion on the AUTM Salary Survey informative and valuable for your career in tech transfer. A special thank you to our guest, John Miner, for sharing his expertise and insights with us. For those interested in exploring the AUTM Salary Survey, it's available on the AUTM website. Be sure to check it out.
Thanks for listening to AUTM on the Air with Lisa Mueller. Get social with us and share your thoughts. You can tweet us at AUTM or visit us online at AUTM.net. We'll be back next week on the air. Be sure to join us.